Thanks for spending a few minutes here on another fall day at Halloween time. I wanted to do a creepier movie, creepier than typical for us to mark Halloween, and I finally settled on Coraline because I had never seen it. But it's one of those movies that hasn't faded with time. People are still talking about it like 15, 16 years now. It's from 2009, so I wanted to see what all the fuss was about, frankly. And I really enjoyed this movie. It gave me a lot to think about and ponder over. So for those who've never seen it, come on along. Coraline is about a young girl who has just relocated with her family from Pontiac, Michigan, with that industrial history, to Ashland, Oregon, a place known for a more artsy community, notably its Shakespeare Festival in the real world, the culture for which gets squeezed in here and there by director Henry Selick in kind of cute little moments. This trajectory for the family, I think, is telling because the early scenes with Coraline and her parents would have you believe that they're very strict, uncompromising, hardworking, nose to the grindstone, businessy people who were even on the border of child neglect, leaving Coraline to entertain herself while they almost desperately complete a project for work. And if you're a child, it might certainly seem that way, but slowly we start to notice things, little things, like the lack of food in the refrigerator, the mostly cheap, possibly homegrown remnants of produce making up their very unappetizing dinner, despite their project being an organic gardening catalog, which ironically keeps them from much real gardening. And both parents look almost sickly and stressed. They're not the beneficiaries of their own passion and work at all. And there are moments they don't even seem to really love Coraline, but then they catch themselves, and we see their attitude is more fear-based than anger-based. Fear about just finishing their work and then trying to sell it and get paid. Fear about, just buying groceries and affording clothing for their daughter. They actually seem to want the best for her. I mean, they moved from a less expensive industrial place to one with a thriving artistic culture, despite that added expense. And they've enrolled Coraline in an obviously private school. But Coraline, only complains about the dull gray uniforms that she'll have to wear. And the reason we don't see the parents up front as possibly good, hardworking, sacrificing people is, I think, because that's a big part of what this movie's about. Because we see them only from Coraline's self-focused point of view. And because, she's such a cool kid, we really like her, we don't realize right away how immature she actually is. How she sees everything from one point of view, that of a child, which she still is inside. And then the film becomes rife with these allusions to taking on a new perspective, taking someone else's point of view, and just seeing the world from another angle that's maybe not as self-serving or one-dimensional. This is something, we all go through in life, and here we go through it with Coraline almost in real time as it happens. Coraline meets a black cat on her walk, and soon after that, a local boy named Wybe, who is awkward, a bit shy, but also smart and very helpful. And they eventually hit it off because both Coraline and Wybe are pretty strong personalities. Wybe's posture and mannerisms seem insecure and withdrawn at first, but he's actually no pushover, this kid. He speaks his mind and becomes very instrumental by the end. Wybe shows Coraline a deep well that is able to go down to near mythical depths. And Wybe also mentions his grandmother, who owns the old lodging where Coraline is staying, but that she'd never rented to a family with kids before because her own sister disappeared from there when they were little girls. So there's something up here with this property and children. It's also worth noting that Wybe doesn't exist in the book Coraline, which had to be expanded in order to make the film. So Wybe is 100% the creation of the movie. And as such, it's kind of a good source of insight about what the filmmakers are trying to do with this story, where they're trying to go with it. Starting with his name, Wybe, which Coraline extrapolates into Why Be Born. "Why were you born?" she asks him. It's kind of heavy stuff for a kid's film. But Coraline is at that age, I think. All 11-year-old people are in some way existentialists. On the one hand, they're grappling with a loss of innocence, of living just to live, to have fun, to not know who they want to become yet, feel no need to know themselves or anybody else, really. There are no big questions, just need fulfillment, wish fulfillment. On the other hand, they're starting to suspect that they're coming to the end of that time, where it's not okay to take other people for granted. It's not okay to not have a bigger view of the world and to take into account other people and our own impact on their lives. Why are you here? And if you don't answer that question or don't want an answer to it, someone else might come along to answer it for you. Whether it's a controlling person, a people collector, a predator, a belief system, a cult, maybe the state. There's no shortage of people or groups more than willing to do your thinking for you, do your believing for you. And all you have to do is sign over your identity, your soul. And that's the theme at the core of this movie, I think. And Wybe illustrates it nicely. In the real world, he's just a kid, full of uncertainty, but also full of character. He's a real personality. But in the other world that they travel to, he's had his voice taken away. He walks and stands upright without any sign of inner turmoil or hesitation. His worries are all removed, at least, at first, because he's lost his soul here, as all the otherworldly versions of the characters have, or almost. Wybe still has some spark here, which the villain has to sew up. Now enter the beldam, the witch of the story, who lures Coraline to the other world, the mirror world, where all of her problems are gone. Where there's plenty of delicious food on the table all the time. There's literally a gravy train and a milkshake chandelier. Everything is set up for her maximum enjoyment. It's basically that return to childhood. Everything happens automatically for her in a carefree way. The house is all fixed up. No one is desperate. No one is looking sick. And everyone has plenty of resources and time to pursue the things that they enjoy. The theatrical neighbors, Miss Spink and Forcible, shed their decrepit bodies and are young again and energetic performers again. Mr. Bobinsky in this world isn't a sweaty, dirty acrobat, constantly practicing his craft and straining his body to remain active, but instead performs effortlessly. There's no struggling for your art here, for your passion here, for your existence, because the beldam has created it all as a perfect dream world to entice Coraline to stay so she can eventually steal her soul. As she has many children before her, she feeds on them, and her last one being the missing sister of Wybe's grandmother. And poor, neglected Coraline initially wants to stay, right? It's awesome here. Her parents are idealized versions of themselves, great food on the table, no mention of school. But there's a catch. Everyone here has buttons sewn onto their eyes. And to stay, she has to have buttons sewn onto her eyes. In effect, lose her own vision. And there's the window to the soul aspect too, where you no longer develop your own point of view. You no longer develop your own identity. You see things only one way, the simplest, happiest way. But it's all provided for you. And it's all a lie. Coraline is now horrified, but she can't escape as easily back to the real world like she could earlier in the film. She finally does with Wybe's help, but when she returns home, Mom and Dad have been kidnapped by the beldam to draw her back in. So she returns with her cat friend for a showdown with the beldam, consisting of some, wonderful big stakes and urgency in the screenplay that I really enjoyed, where Coraline must find the eyes of the previous children whose souls the beldam still has trapped, who Coraline meets as ghosts inside a mirror at one point, and must also find her parents in order to win everyone's freedom. It's an all-or-nothing gamble with the beldam. Now, I won't ruin the ending, but it's a lot of fun. I watched it twice, in fact, and it's got really good layers to the story. One of them is definitely about how, resources and money and lack of it creates not only hardship, not only, hunger, but brings out a more desperate, unforgiving side in people. Mom, scolds Coraline for wanting special winter gloves at one point because even on sale, they're just too expensive. But as soon as they sell their gardening book, the first thing Mom does is buy Coraline the gloves. These aren't bad people. They're not even bad parents on the whole. But when you can't afford to make your child's life as good as it should be, that comes out somewhere as fear or as anger. And Coraline finally begins to have that larger perspective on them. When her parents go missing, she begins to see them as real people. And she even starts to recreate them in one touching moment with her pillows. And then she begins to cry. And there's another layer here to growing up and choosing a path in life, and that's to do with all the fun and the madcap circus mentality she encounters in the other world. The stay with us and every night will be a party group, a new performance or a new show on the horizon. Otherworld Bobinsky asks Coraline, why go home, be bored and unhappy? Stay here with us and not have a care in the world. And I was reminded of Pinocchio in the Island of the Lost Boys, who actually the Lost Boys are in Peter Pan, but they have something similar in Pinocchio, who's another character who has to choose between a real life as a real little boy, as it were, here a little girl, and just being someone's doll, a plaything without much agency at all. And one of Pinocchio's big moments is falling for that easy camaraderie with those boys on Pleasure Island, I think it's called. And, that's kind of real in our lives. You do find people who legitimize each other's lack of growing up, lack of any sense of ambition or pursuing your own identity, your own thing. But, they'll be there to prop you up as long as you do the same for them in not trying. Even in young adulthood. Just go to any neighborhood bar almost, and there's a coterie of people who found each other for exactly that purpose. And I'm not throwing stones, because I've been there. And that scene feeds on a steady diet of new misery. Because playthings get old, people get wise. And, the ghost children here in Coraline finally understand what happened to them. They were the flavors of the day, and the beldam just moved on. The beldam always needs a new playmate, a new doll to play with. There's an important lesson here in Coraline from 2009, just as there was in Pinocchio in 1940. To not be that for other people. To not settle for that. If you don't decide what to do with your heart, and what to do with your soul, perhaps, and with your energies, someone will decide for you, and probably kill that soul and those energies in the process. The beldam's purpose is to keep you from your own time, from your own life. And, as an English major, let me just say I recognize that name, beldam, or the beldam, from my romantic poetry courses in a poem called La Beldame Sans Merci, The Beautiful Woman Without Mercy. I had to go read it again because all I recalled was the title. It's a poem by Keats, and it recounts a young knight on horse finding a beautiful woman in the wild with wild, beautiful eyes who leads him to her home and into a slumber where he encounters the ghosts of those she's lured there before, telling him in a dream, La Beldame Sans Merci has got you now. And it sort of ends there, but you can see where that character fits appropriately here, or that influence on character in Coraline. Now, this movie also reminded me of William Blake. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight, some are born to endless night. That poem is echoed a bit here, and is certainly about perspective taking and choosing how you will engage with your own life. Because there aren't two worlds here. The people born to sweet delight and the people born to endless night, sometimes they're the same people. There's 2 exits to the tunnel that Coraline finds, but there's only one key, as it's pointed out at one point. They both exist within Coraline, each world a dream in a way of the other. The tunnel between them is kind of birthy looking too, but we'll leave that right there. The question is, which version of us will we be when we wake up today? Now, I've seen other great takes on the film. Cinema Therapy, for instance, focused on the predator aspects of the relationship with the beldam and the idea of escapism that Coraline gets caught up in. Even the beldam's phony world being an echo of video games and VR. That serotonin hit that's hard to give up. So go watch those guys too. There's always a great perspective there. There's also a weird echo of being a YouTuber in this movie, in the parents who are under such pressure to publish content that they, scarcely have time to do the very things that they were once passionate about because they have to, vlog about it instead and feed the algorithm. So on that note, I just want to say I do only make videos anymore on things that I do feel strongly about. And if that's a take of YouTube that you value, I hope you'll consider subscribing, giving a like, or leaving a comment down below, even becoming a sustaining member below. It'll help me keep doing just that. Now, shout out to new member Rock Wilk, whose channel I've been watching for a long time now. So I know he's a really great artist. He's a poet. He's a filmmaker who's embarking on a new film project that I also hope you'll check out too and maybe support. I'll leave a link to his channel down below as well. Welcome, Rock. Okay, happy Halloween, everyone. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.